Morning, guys and gals. Rich Brown out here on the range in a rainy Oliver Springs, Tennessee. Today with me, of course, is Andrew Keith. And we want to talk to you about a couple things that we had come in as questions. And my producer has been kind enough to put this together for me. Let's see. The other thing you might be saying is, Rich, why would you hide the beautiful salon quality hair you have underneath this hat? And that's a great question.
Or what's left of it.
Yeah, or what's left of it. But it is raining, and we're going to go through a couple of these things. This question comes to us from Eric, and he says, I had a question regarding some PTSD-esque protecting your non-caring spouse type stuff. We agree that it's a topic awfully rife with what-ifs and contingencies galore, and that I probably shouldn't overthink it too much. It might be something easier to touch on in a video log, which we are doing right now. So, Andrew, what do you think about that? Does your wife carry?
No, she does not.
So what do you do?
She likes to shoot, but she's not to the level of training to, be comfortable carrying in public. A general rule of thumb, it's hard to get into the specifics because there's always if this, then that, situation A through situation double Z. There's 1,000 or 1,000,000 different scenarios out there. My general rule of thumb for her is if I'm getting my firearm out to engage a bad guy for whatever reason, get away from me. Because I'm about to start drawing attention to myself in a negative way.
Oh, yeah.
And along with drawing bad guys' attention, I'm probably going to draw his bullets, and I don't want my family anywhere near that. So, a good rule of thumb is create separation, and that also works if we're both armed.
Mm-hmm.
Two guys with guns can do more than one guy with a gun.
Yeah, we talked about that. We'll
or gal.
Yeah, or gal. We'll probably have lunch here in a second. We were talking about that. Since he and I haven't been out in town much together, we're on the square range together a lot, but we are both two armed dudes walking around out in town. And what happens? We talked about maybe if I see Andrew drawn down and maybe he says gun or he sees the gun or the threat, I'm going to move in an opposite direction to Andrew to my own position of cover. What do you think about that?
Anytime you can outflank whoever your opponent happens to be, whether it's a mall shooting or in a restaurant or whatever, if you have two people with a gun, one of them, or both need to be engaging, but they also need to be maneuvering, and maneuvering in such a way to where bad guy has two hard choices. He can shoot, in this direction, or he can shoot in that direction, but he can't do both at the same time. So either way, it's similar with a hostage rescue where, you go in and you get depth and width in the room. Bad guy can only shoot at one of you at a time. So if you create that separation, maybe if you can't find a position of cover, at least get the L-shaped ambush. Pretty much is what it is, and you start engaging from two different directions. So he can't get you both, and you're going to ultimately end the situation.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with the L-shaped ambush, of course, I was an instructor of the School of Infantry, the old Marine Corps 6-5 field manual for Marine infantry rifle squads. Dust it off, find it somewhere online, L-shaped ambush, take a look at it. Another thing I would encourage you to do is moving and shooting around vehicles in teams. We wrote a really good series of my FBI Miami shootout, which there's a lot of really great lessons to learn as far as shooting in and around vehicles. Now, there's so many variables, guys, we can't go into a lot. We're just going to keep it real simple. You and your family probably should have a code word, whether that's gun or threat, or I'm not going to tell you what it needs to be, but everybody in your family needs to know what it is. And we also talked about if your wife's a firm. I have a real good friend right now. She just had a surgery. She can't really walk around really well. So in that regard, if I say gun and draw down and my wife is somehow handicapped or disabled at that moment, maybe she has to stay behind me. If not, I suggest her getting away from me into a position of cover immediately, especially if she's not carrying, which I think is what the gentleman that asked that question was asking.
Or you get away from her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before you engage, before you actually start to draw bad guys' attention and bullets, maybe you get away from her. You tell her, hey, get out of here, or gun, or whatever your code word is, and then you sprint to another location as you're drawing, and you make sure when you start to engage that you are in a good, safe distance away from your family. If your wife's carrying an infant or got a toddler with her or something like that, she's got to snatch up and run or get away, that y'all are definitely in two different spots before you start engaging in a gunfight. Because pretty much that's what you're doing. If your wife and toddler don't have a gun, you're bringing two unarmed people
To your gunfight.
to your gunfight that you're engaging in. So the separation is a good general rule of thumb. Just get that separation.
And on that note, when I was at the police academy back in the early 70s, one of the things that they taught us was, when the instructor said, what percent of the time you as a police officer are going to be going to a situation involving a firearm? And it's like 10%, 15%, maybe 20%. And the answer is 100% of the time, because you brought the firearm to the situation. So the same thing here. If you're a concealed carry holder, you're taking the firearm with you everywhere you go. Everywhere you go, there's a firearm involved, or potential for a firearm to be involved. So just a couple of thoughts on that, Eric. I hope that kind of semi-answered your question. Too many variables to give you a complete checklist, right?
It's hard to go, hey, if A happens, then do 1, 2, and 3. Step 1, 2, and 3. There's so many infinite number of scenarios. I would say go with a more concept-based approach as opposed to finding the technique for this scenario, then the technique for this scenario, because you're going to have so many techniques that you'll never remember them all.
Yeah, and of course, American Warrior Society co-founder Mike Seeklander, his show The Best Defense has many of these videos, so I encourage you to go watch them. They'll do a much better job answering that for you, perhaps, than Andrew and I did today.